This is the Persistence of Vision podcast. Welcome into the Persistence of Vision podcast. I'm Clint Till, where each month in this show, I sit down with a creative professional and we talk about their career experiences and the lessons they've learned along the way. My guest this month is filmmaker Michael Williams. This is going to be a great interview. You want to stick around for this one. Michael and I first met through the Magnolia Film Festival. He is a West Point, Mississippi native, and he has been in and around the filmmaking industry for a very long time. There's a quote that Michael has used before: "The dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately." And in the world of independent film, that hustle usually involves wearing 5 different hats, working in 100-degree heat, and finding a way to make a $10,000 budget look like $1 million. If you're familiar with the independent film scene, you might know Michael from his 2015 post apocalyptic film Oz Land, or his 2017 supernatural horror follow up, The Atoning. Michael and I talk a lot in this conversation about some really important things, some honest, vulnerable things that you might not hear just anywhere. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Michael Williams. How about we start here? How about, Michael, you just go ahead and introduce yourself professionally? Who are you and what are we doing?
Yeah, my name is Michael Williams, and I'm a writer, director, cinematographer, filmmaker in general. But I'm also a gardener and a Mississippi Hobbit.
Your history and your work, I know that you've been very involved in the film festivals there in Mississippi. And tell me a little bit about your start there, because way back, early 2000s, you were really getting your starter. Maybe you can kind of explain the story a little bit better, but you knew Pat Raspberry. And so tell a little bit about that and your relationship there and kind of how that kind of thrust you into filmmaking a little bit.
Yeah, so in high school, sometimes I would prefer to make a video than write an essay, and they would let me do that sort of thing. But then, like, junior, senior year, I started being a little more serious about it, making, silly videos that would have been like YouTube videos. I'm glad they never were put on YouTube.
Oh
But
my gosh.
yeah,
If I had YouTube back then, it would just be I would be regretting it to this day for
yeah.
all the crazy stuff I made.
I mean, there's DVDs out there, but the originals are on high tape, so you gotta have a high camera to see the originals. But
Yeah.
that's what I was using a high camera back then that I bought off eBay, in high school. And then I found out about the Tupelo Film Festival. I didn't even know about the MAG, which is, the oldest film festival in Mississippi and closer to me, but I didn't know about it. But I heard about the Tupelo Film Festival. Somebody said, "Hey, you should submit one of your movies." So, I decided, well, I'm gonna make a serious movie that doesn't have copyrighted music, whatever. So I basically made like a music video to this piano piece that this pianist in my church at the time played of Amazing Grace. Had my grandmother die in it, all this very dramatic stuff. And I submitted that and I got in, and it was just like blew my mind. I was like, oh, I got into this film festival. I've never been to one, but this is cool. But then I also met Kat Phillips. Did you know Kat Phillips?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I met her either at that first Tupelo Film Festival or shortly after, and she's the person who gave me my first job in the film industry. When I was in college, she hired me as a production assistant, and then I found out they needed a first AC focus puller and threw me into that as a college kid, never done anything before. So that's kind of where I got my start. And it was all because of Pat Raspberry and Tupelo Film Festival. And then years later, like maybe just a few years ago, someone from the board at the same time when Pat accepted my movie admitted that no one liked my movie. They all thought it was horrible, which is, understandably it
Yeah.
was. But they told me that Pat saw something and said, "No, this kid's really trying. We need to get his film and put it in here and see what happens." And it was only
Wow.
because of Pat and Pat standing up for whatever she saw in me. And that's gonna make me a little emotional. Sorry,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but like what Pat did for people like that was amazing because she
Yeah.
really, saw opportunities. And had I not had that opportunity, I would have met Philip Gentile and gone to film school. I would have met Kat Phillips and had my first film job, nor become a camera assistant for over around 10 years. So like the whole trajectory of me being in a camera department was because of that. Because I was just going to be a filmmaker. I was going to be a writer director. I didn't know how to make a living in the film industry,
Mhm.
but going to that one film festival just opened up all those doors. And then I found out the Mag Film Festival and different ones and all that. So
That's amazing, because, my uncle is in advertising, and he was always very inspirational for me growing up because he would come to family get-togethers and have a 3/4 inch tape deck, and, "Hey, check out this commercial we just did," and I was really fascinated by the world. So, it was great because I could kinda see what he was doing, and that kind of inspired me, and so now I he kind of showed me the ropes a little bit, and I got on as a set PA for different things, and I've always was eager as a kid, coming up, wanting people to kind of and mentor me, help me, and so, I admire those people like Pat and others that can see something in a young kid now and say, "Hey, there's some there," and kinda nurture that and then open up these doors of opportunity, but it is interesting to think about just that one little moment that this door opened and you kind of on this whole new path that maybe you didn't expect, and so that's what I would like to do is kind of help other people that are younger than me now that I'm, 20 something years into this business and, try to bring other people along too,
Yeah,
which I
and
think
that's
is
how
great.
all of us, I think, get through the industry. It's all someone opening up an opportunity. It's I always told people it's not just who you know, it's who you know and who likes you and who's
Mhm,
going to hear your opportunity. Like, sometimes I'll be working with a crew member, and then on set they would say, I'm doing this, but I really want to do that. And all they had to do was say that because they
mhm,
just said it to someone or they said it out loud to somebody like, oh well, I'll keep that in mind, and in the future I'll hire you for that. So it's all of that kind of either just letting people know what you want to do and finding those opportunities, or people who kind of nudge you and, like I said, like they just made me a camera assistant just because, and then I didn't realize that's exactly what I needed to be doing. But it's those opportunities that people will open up for you in the film industry, I think are really vital to anybody trying to make it in the industry. And that's why, you don't want to burn bridges, and you want to always try to make your connections be worthwhile and be sincere, and be somebody people want to work with, and that'll carry you a long way. And then that just kind of opens up doors, beyond just being talented or being in the right place at the right time. It's also the connections, because there are a lot of people out there who do want to help, especially in the South.
mhm,
That's another reason why I think I like, staying in Mississippi, is that people care about not just the process, but the people who make films. Like, they care about who's involved. They care about taking care of people. They care about making sure that the younger generation has an opportunity. And it's not this like cutthroat industry that you might see in, some bigger markets. But in Mississippi, it's like we're all here to make a film. Like, we're excited to do so.
yeah,
We want to work with these people that we love to work with, and just having the opportunity to do that is great in Mississippi because the opportunities aren't as prevalent as we would like them to be. So I guess we're a little more eager here and there, but really it's just I forgot where I was going with all that.
that's
Oh,
fine. I know that I had a student film that got into the Sidewalk Film Festival in Birmingham when I was coming up
mhm.
through college, and yeah, I went to the festival and I saw my film up there, and that was exciting, but then I realized when I saw it up against other films, then I realized just how bad it was in my view, right?
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, no." I mean, it was part of a student film blog, but there's something about seeing other people's work at a film festival when you're that young, even now at my age, where you're thinking, "Oh, man, that's really good. Like, I'm gonna try that the next time." So I'm curious, like, for your first experience, you said that the people didn't like your film, but Pat saw something in you. Were you kinda the same way when you were at the film festival, seeing all this other work, thinking kind of did it spur you on to try new things and get better at what you do?
Oh yeah, because I mean, especially in my early career, and probably most of what I made, has been very visual focused. I would see a lot of films, because I was really working on telling a story visually through cinematography and all that. So script writing was not my forte back in the day, and it's something that I'm excited to for my next step. 'Cause I feel like I've gotten so much better. But then when I would see people, I'm like, oh man, they have really good actors, or they directed
Mhm.
those actors really well, or they had a really good script. Um, or their cinematography was really great, and I was like, "Oh, they're better than me." But it was always like inspirational. It was never competitive. But also, I loved going to film festivals and seeing um, people from all over the world, because like you don't really get to see those kind of films when you're from Mississippi very much. But when you go to a film festival, you see films that are from other languages that are
Mhm.
very visually reliant on them telling a story. So I was like, oh, now I'm seeing films that speak a language that I understand visually, even though I don't understand the language, or I have to read the subtitles. So that was very inspirational. Just seeing something different, something, genres I would never be interested in seeing, but at a film festival, especially something like the Mag Film Festival, where you're in one block and you see the full gambit of every genre, from every budget level, just about in one
Yeah.
block. But they all somehow stand together in a block that makes sense, and you're like, "This is independent film." But then you're inspired by so much of it.
Yeah. So you said you kinda got into being a set PA after that, and then kinda got thrust in the first AC role that you had never done. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious, I love to hear about, like, A, nightmare stories where you're like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing?"
Mhm.
When things went wrong, but also, from those nightmare stories, what I learned from it and how it helped me to get better. So I'm just curious when you're thrust into this as a young PA, you're not, well versed in this world. What were some of those first like eye-opening stories where you're like, "Oh no, this happened and I don't know what I'm doing," but you learned something from it?
Yeah, well, that first film was, it's called Chasing the White Dragon. It was shot in Tupelo in 2007. So, like 2 years after, in high school, doing that first little movie, and I'd just been making, still at that point, only silly films with my friends and maybe some projects for school. I had never been on a film set, didn't really know how the hierarchy worked, any of that.
Right.
So they hired me as a production assistant, and I think I had like a week of prep with them. But then when I showed up, Kat was like, "We need a first AC," and I'm like, and they didn't have any ACs hired, and so I don't know whose decision it was, but they were like, "Well, Michael could be the first AC," and I was like, "Sure, what's that?" And then they're like, and it was on a Sony. I don't even remember what it was, but the big Sony camera back in like the late '90s, early 2000s, people were using um, on a very long lens, a lot of
Mhm.
handheld. Um, and I wanna give a shout out to that cinematographer, Chris Riley. Like, I feel so bad for him coming into Mississippi and then being given me as a first AC. So that was a horror story for him. Uh,
Yeah.
being this Mississippi boy who didn't really know how a set structure worked, and then having to sometimes I was holding a monitor that was a tube monitor. Like, it was a
Mhm.
monitor this big with a tube on the back, and that's where I was holding
Yeah.
to pull focus from.
Oh, man.
Most of the time, I had to pull focus from, measurement. Didn't have
Yeah.
a no laser or anything. It was fully, like, tape measure and using my eye and having to figure it out. So, even though that was insane and I messed up a lot of shots. The film turned out and, make got made, so I didn't get fired. But I learned so much of being thrust into just that situation, which I think maybe I work well in that situation, just being saying, here's a scenario and you've got to survive it. And
Yeah.
that's what I think I learned in on Chasing the White Dragon was like, I just have to learn this skill and I got to be good at it and got to really, focus on what's important. Cause like I didn't have those extra tools that a lot of ACs have today. I was having to do it like the old school people were doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that really was beneficial because then I learned the art of it before I had the tech to support me. But even like that movie, I learned that I didn't want to be in work on film because most of the days were 12 to 14 to 17-hour days. Our last day was a 24-hour day. And every night I would go and eat like a full thing of Waffle House and I still lost weight. And I was like losing weight on that movie. So I didn't realize, I thought that's how hard movies were. And
Yeah.
then after that, I realized, oh, wait, they aren't always that hard. They aren't always that long hours. But what brought me back was like after the recovery of like 2 weeks of leaving that film set, I was like, oh, I miss the collaboration. I miss
Mhm.
all the crew people. I miss the like culture of working on set, which is something I never anticipated because I want to be a writer director. I want to be Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
But in that movie, I realized, oh, when you're on the crew, especially on something like that, that's so intense and borderline traumatizing in some ways, you really like connect with not just the crew, but the actors and everyone in between. And then it's a whole world that only lasts for a few weeks or a month. And then most of those people were from Chicago or somewhere else and they all left. But then you realize, wow, crew life is really part of what drives the desire to want to make movies, not just the end result, but who you're making it with and that lifestyle.
Mhm. Is the collaboration and the team aspect of it kind of the main thing that drew you to filmmaking and continues to draw you? Or, because I noticed that some people fear collaboration and they have their own ideas and they wanna fight for their own way or no way.
Mhm.
Um, and some people thrive maybe on just being a writer when they can kind of lock themselves in a room and be in their own head. But it sounds like you really thrive in that collaborative environment. So I was just curious if that was really what drew you to the industry.
Well, that's a skill I think you have to learn in the film industry, especially if you're a writer director and someone has a very strong vision, like I do. I had to really learn collaboration because I was too
Mhm,
bulky at times, or um, I didn't learn how to. I had to learn the art of being able to understand someone's contribution, but if
mhm.
it doesn't line up with the vision or it's not supporting things, to be able to not take it. Because there are opinions that are good and bad in collaboration, and sometimes we're not on the same page. But when you find those people that are on the same page to where you have an idea, they have an idea, and it just keeps bouncing and growing, and then you have a language at some point. We don't have to talk to each other. You know it. that's what the collaboration that I thrive off of, because there was no friction. It was just creation, and
Yeah.
creation that was inspired by, like, Ozland was that for me. Ozland was the project that, I felt like there was a lot of people had their hands on a lot of things, and while I was in control and, kind of had my vision, that was the first project where I felt like I really learned how to give them the tools to work with, or the script or the vision, and then see them say, "Well, this is how I'm gonna do it," or my support of that, and I'll stop probably still a little heavy-handed on some things on that film,
Mhm.
but I can still see where somebody had this idea and they brought that to life. But what I loved about that, it was they always had ideas that supported the story or the theme. They understood what I was going for, even if I didn't know exactly what I wanted. They
Yeah, yeah, okay.
had vision, and I think that's where the collaboration really sparks the interest in me, is when we're like on a trampoline and we're just bouncing each other up higher and higher in this creative just explosion. Versus projects that I've also made where there's just lots of friction and you're just trying to get the project done and please everybody, and
Mhm.
all of that. So it can go either way, but I would definitely say it's a muscle and it's like a skill to learn when you do have a very strong vision, as a filmmaker.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's something about those ideas, like you said, that are bouncing back and forth, but it's all in an effort to kinda elevate the work, and so you come out with something better than what you thought before. I was actually Instagram knows what I like, right? And it just feeds me all kinds of behind the scenes filmmaker moments. And
Mm.
it showed a scene from Wolf of Wall Street where Leonardo DiCaprio's character is talking with another character in a scene where his character Jordan Belfort is just being introduced to penny stocks and what that means. And it was one of those side by side videos where you see like
Wow.
the original script or the shooting script along with the finished film on the other side of the frame, and you can see where the actors improvised, and you could see where the actors brought more than what was on the page to kind of flesh out the character and to kind of
Mm.
elevate the scene. And so it goes to what you're saying about everybody that's bringing their own ideas to something, but in service to the story, in service to the film, in an effort not to shove their own idea in there just as a braggadocious way, but just to like this we can make this work better. And yeah, I just love that kind of stuff.
And
Um,
that's how, like, I you can convince me, if I'm against an idea and, as a director or whatever, I just or even a cinematographer, if that's if I'm working with a director or something, if I feel very strongly about something, but if you can convince me through the story and the script, then you probably can get me where I'm like, "Oh, okay, I see, I see." But if it's just an idea that's not supported, like I said, like you said, it's like arbitrary, it's harder. But when you get with me and you like click with that with me, then it's like, "Oh yeah, you changed my mind. Let's go for it." And I love
right. Yeah.
this too.
Yeah, don't just say to me, "Hey, why don't we shoot it like this?" That doesn't tell me anything. But if you say, "Here's why I think this way of shooting it would work better for this moment," then I'm more inclined to say, "Okay, tell me more about that."
Well, it's a
'Cause
skill that I think other people within the crew world should take from a writer director or a director actor relationship. Because you don't just go tell an actor, be sad.
right.
That's not the thing. You tell them why, or you're discussing why the character is sad. You're going into deeper things, not telling them they're not a machine to say emote. They're a collaborator to understand. And if, they're not given the performance you want, you don't give them emotions to feel. You discuss on a deeper level of how they can emote and understand that. And I think when you work with that with a creative too, even if it's somebody who's doing props, don't just tell them you don't like the prop. Tell them why, or more specifically, the prop should emote. What's the point of this prop? Like, let's
Mhm,
talk about it. Where did it come from? What's the significance in the story? Why should it be one color? And then those decisions help you decide why something is. And I think it may seem arbitrary to an audience member being like, oh, it doesn't matter what color this is. But if everything has an intention behind why someone did it, just like an actor has a reason why they said the line the way they said it, a crew person or whoever is curating some part that's on screen or being viewed or heard by the audience, whatever the senses they are. If it's all motivated by something, the audience is going to get it and it's going to feel cohesive, even if they don't realize it. And that's
right.
why the movies that really work, and you do ask somebody, "Well, why'd you do this?" They have an answer. It may go long-winded as to why they have it, and it may be completely irrelevant on the surface level, but deep down, those decisions trickle down between everybody in the set or everybody in any part of the production process when all those ideas are supported, and then in the end, you have this beautiful product that just
Mhm.
feels cohesive because it's intentional, and it's really intentionality.
And it's easy to fall into this habit of just like, I gotta get my shot list together. Let me just, shoot this with general coverage. I'll get over the shoulder here, get it over the shoulder there. And often I find myself kind of thinking ahead, for better or for worse, thinking ahead to that Q&A session somewhere down the road where somebody's going to ask me, "Hey, why did you shoot it this way?" And I got to have an answer for that. So it kind of forces me to think through, okay, let me not rush through prepping this shot list, but let me really think about this scene, really think about what's going on here, and really shoot it in a way where it it makes sense for why the camera's placed here and why the actor comes in this direction and why the actors do this within the scene,
Yeah,
'cause I
and
think it's easy to just kinda sit and that's I've watched so many video essays about this where so much, so many films and TV shows you see just, like, 2 people talking to each other. It's just shot here, we cut back to this person, we cut back to that person, when you can do so much more to elevate it, make it more dynamic.
and honestly, that's one reason why I don't enjoy watching much movies or anything anymore, because I do feel like it is just a lot of people standing and talking and very soap opera-y, and I think
Yeah.
it is because they're trying to, cut corners, make it easier, and I'm like, "Why don't we have some movement? Why don't we have the camera or the actors or some movement happening that creates life to the scene that's also telling the story?" That's why I do love, Steven Spielberg does a lot. It's obvious, that it's an obvious example of how he does that, where the blocking with the camera work is telling the story, and that's something I think I struggled with a lot of directors that I've worked with, is that they may not have understood that. They would wanna
Mhm.
have a really comprehensive, shot list beforehand or no shot list. And what I always like to do is have a shot list that I know is like, okay, to cover this scene, we have to have this number of shots. We need to have some wides, some mediums, whatever. But what those look like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Unless we have planned something, or there were some shots in Ozland where I knew I wanted this shot to be orchestrated in this way for a certain purpose. But then when it came down to blocking or covering a certain scene, I knew maybe what I needed coverage wise, just as a menu option. I need this many shots and these types of shots. But then getting on set and seeing the blocking and seeing how the actors do something within the space changes everything. Cause then you'll see like, oh, him
Mhm.
turning here or her doing this requires an extra shot, or maybe the shot should move now. Like that's why I love sitting and, going on set, with a script in mind, and we, block it out and all. But then me and the director, after the actors have all blocked, then we go and talk about what we saw. We saw where people moved, and then we orchestrate and say, does our shot list even matter? Can we just throw it away, or does it still work? And then now we figure out how to add some flair to it. How does this medium say something more than just covering a medium? Whether it's an angle or it's a movement or the lighting's doing it. But that's also really hard to do in independent film. You may not always have that luxury. But there are certain films where I did, like Dinner Party is the film that I did right before the pandemic, that I did have that ability. I wasn't operating, and um, the set dynamic was just in a way where I could focus on the visuals and really telling the story visually, which is super rewarding. And the film didn't get much play because of the pandemic and all, sadly, but visually, it was like, this is an opportunity that I could really show people when everyone on set, even on something that way, is unified with the vision. Because I was able to actually talk to the production design and costumes, and we were all kind of going for this Baroque aesthetic. Even though we weren't, very like hand on nail, like we have to do it this way. Everyone was inspired by that one little thing. And just those extra conversations, I think, added a lot to the final product of the movie and what it looked like. It felt a little more cohesive, even though we were on a small budget and we didn't have a lot of opportunity for departments to plan ahead. It was really just a mood board and some conversations beforehand that
Mhm.
allowed us to have those opportunities on set to make those decisions.
Do you want your footage to look more like film? Well then, you need to try Dehancer, the premier film emulation plugin that brings authentic analog aesthetics to your digital workflow. Dehancer has over 60 iconic film profiles, 130 plus camera log options, realistic grain, halation, bloom, film damage, and advanced tools like LUT generators and color pipelines. Dehancer can improve the look of your footage with film-like texture. It's compatible with DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Photoshop, Lightroom, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Final Cut Pro, and more, plus mobile and online versions for on-the-go creativity. If you're interested in elevating the look of your color grade with genuine film emulation, you can get 10% off any Dehancer product by using my promo code VISION at checkout. Dehancer. Take a look, see for yourself, dehancer.com and use my promo code VISION.
You mentioned earlier friction and how that can really um, just wear on everybody and just isn't productive. But I'm just curious if you have any specific moments where you don't have to name names, obviously, but just kind of oh, I remember when this happened in this particular situation was a really frictional moment that really taught me this.
Well, I mean, I think it's no secret to anybody who does know me that the Atoning was not the most fun experience making it for me. It was 6 months from conception to completion. So it was we wanna make a horror mo we were gonna make this team that we had got together, we were going to make a science fiction film originally. But it was too big. A lot of, just we just wasn't gonna work, so we are gonna make a horror film. But then I was given, 6 months to or about a month to write the script, start casting, so that was like a June or something. I think I started. We filmed it in August or September, and then by January 1st, it had to be finished editing and sent to a distributor. So
Wow.
it all worked out, but it was very much the start of my burnout. It was
Yeah.
like the film where I was like, this is where it was, and because it was so much friction, there wasn't that joy of creation where I spent almost 2 years probably on Ozland, but every bit of it was like making me more excited, more energetic for what I was doing, and the atoning was just for a lot of reasons. Just a lot of friction. But then also there was a lot of beauty in the atoning, and I really need to rewatch it, and it's been
Hmm.
so long, and remind myself of what beauty we made and how really it was a great experience. There was just moments on set where I had to stand up for things, either creatively or on set that were personal issues between people, to where I had to learn to put on my big boy pants and get in someone's face and be the person I'm not normally. Um,
Right.
and so that was something to where it's just totally unnecessary. Like there's no reason those things should be happening on a set of mine, at least I thought. Like we're hiring good people. This should not be
Hmm.
this kind of drama.
Yeah.
But in the end, I was honestly the atoning was a easier shoot itself. Like the 12 days was easier. We ended early sometimes. It was all one location, a lot cleaner than Ozland. We weren't in gross places, but it was the creative differences and some of those things where I mentioned where it was like, why are we making decisions based off of things that don't support the story? Why are we
Mhm.
doing this because you heard somewhere on the internet that we're doing, or you have to have this in a certain part of the movie, or things like that, where it's like,
Sure.
you know, trying to catch a trend, or the reason the atoning starts the way it is because you have to have that moment within the first 5 minutes to catch the attention on streaming. Like, is all that kind of stuff people were telling
Yeah.
you have to do this, and some of that stuff is valuable. Like the atoning is still a little slow. It needed to be a little faster. And, Ozland was too long. So I learned that with the atoning. But there was all these friction moments that I think just in the end are unnecessary on independent film. Everyone should really be in it for the same reasons. And then that's why also you learn that collaboration's not always good. Sometimes you do make bad choices with people you collaborate with. Or it's not necessarily a bad choice, it's just a choice that doesn't work out. Um, but on features, it's rough because that's also a commitment,
Yeah. Yeah.
particularly one that gets distribution and all that. Like you still have a long time with it.
Yeah, so for someone that might be listening to this who I mean, everyone knows that filmmaking is hard and filmmaking is no guarantee, and it's can take forever to get a project from the page to the screen. But there may be some that kind of have this wide-eyed optimism and they're just kind of like skipping, everything is rainbows and gumdrops and I'm going to make a movie. So let's kind of put a little dose of reality on that listener for a second. And just like with your experience with the toning, just say, hey, what would you say? Filmmaking's great. This is a great thing to do creatively, but you got to watch out for this. But you got to go in understanding this.
Yeah. Well, I used to be that hopeful optimist. Like I was always just like, this is great. We're all, no matter how much the industry was actually abusing me. Like that's something I've
Hmm.
realized too, is that the industry, especially on the indie level, when you're not union, like I said, that first movie, working 17 to 24-hour days, not getting fed, sleeping properly, like there were things that happened to me during that, like physically, like my body shutting down that I never experienced before.
Yeah.
And so multiple times later, where it's like there's no reason for anyone to be working as hard as they are to make a movie. But money, time, whatever,
Yeah.
always get in the way. So that's you got to be the hopeful optimism because how else are you going to get through it? Like you got to have
Hmm.
that dream, or else why would you be in this industry that, unless you're at a certain level, is not easy to do. And now there are certain independent films I've worked on, like, I'll give a shout out to Mysterious Circumstances. That film was not expensive, but I felt like we were at $1,000,000. We were fed and taken care of, like, it was one of those things where it's like, "This is what independent film should be," but it's rare, and so if you are a young person coming or any person at any age coming to the film industry, because you can do it at any age, it is something where you may have to pay your dues for a while, but you can't do it for very long, or else you'll get abused and taken advantage of, from a, like, financial, overworked situation. So you've gotta kinda get your claws in, but then you've gotta stand up for yourself and start asking for that day rate that you require or,
Yeah.
saying no when they want you to work things that are dangerous or whatever. Um, and I think now it's a little easier for you to stand up for that, but for the first 10, 15 years of my career, you didn't because you either didn't know you had a voice or you were on the same page of thinking this is life or death.
Mhm.
What's bad about that is a lot of us who work in the film industry are put in a fight or flight scenario for work all the time on a daily basis. And then that carries on into your real life too. And I think that's why so many of us in the industry get burnt out. We don't realize that our nervous system is fried because
Wow.
you're also in make believe world where you're making believe scared or you're making believe sad, but those emotions are real, whether it be for an
Mhm.
actor, especially an actor who's having to feel them, but also the crew who's having to experience it and capture it or support it in some way. If you're working on a film that's heavy, heavy subject matter, it's not always an easy thing for people to just to shake off.
Yeah.
And then if you're also underfed and overworked, it's rough. So I'd say just you got to make sure you don't burn yourself out. And I probably should have burnt out 10 years ago, but I think it sneaks up on you, you don't realize it. Um, so it's hard to be that hopeful optimist that I used to be.
Sure. Yeah.
I also don't want to just perpetuate a industry that does do that to people. That's one reason why after the Atoning, I haven't made a features because I said, well, I want to have enough money to do it right, where I'm not killing myself over the process, wearing too many hats. I can pay more people, but also the people I'm paying are being paid well, fed well, and taken care of. And
Mhm.
that's not an important thing for people when you're asking for money.
Yeah.
They have to think about that.
Well, let's get into that a little bit when you talk about burnout, because I know that when we were chatting before the recording, you were talking about how you're not so sure kind of where you are in your career right now in filmmaking. So just let's talk for a second about the importance of taking care of yourself, the importance of your mental health, the importance of like it's okay to step away to if you need to kind of uh, look after yourself for a bit.
Yeah. Well, I think it all comes down to is like for even if it comes down to like a daily thing, like you have to take care of yourself and fuel yourself first before you
Hmm.
do anything for anybody else, in just any part of your life. So even with film, it's like, you have to have a good breakfast, good sleep. You have to do all those things. And if you can't, then you have to do it when you're not working. But the hustle is always there, and that's the tough part. I mean, I'm definitely still a filmmaker and I consider myself still that. It's just hard when you're not actively doing it.
Hmm.
And so now I've realized that the more I took a step back and wasn't trying to hustle, like I wasn't taking a month to recover and then say, okay, now I'm going to go and make my next feature. I'm going to go do that thing. Cause as soon as I did, I just fell back down. It was another just
Yeah.
burnout. Even if I gained enough energy to actually do something, I would always hit that wall of whatever I was trying to achieve. So just trying to like have the energy to play the game is a lot. To have the energy to make the stuff was a lot. So I realized I just got to take a step back, and that's when I got into the garden. And I created this company called the Great Gatsby Herb Cartel, where it's just me and my two cats, and we're creating this world that I realize scratches the same itch that filmmaking does. To really just have that passion to go and like kill myself for a movie, I don't have
Yeah.
right now because I realize I'd rather kill myself in the garden because I'm seeing how quickly a creative idea can turn
Hmm.
around. What ideas are worth that much effort when I've realized the garden is sometimes worth those quick, poetic things that I want to get out into the world.
Even whether it's a feature film or a short film, it's still going to require a lot of commitment. It's still going to require a lot of people for the most part. For the most part, and I haven't done a film in 2 years, but while you're putting creative energies in gardening, I'm finding creative energy in podcasting. I'm finding my creative outlet in just writing about my experiences and writing about film, and that's fun for me because I don't know, I think there's this element of time as I get older, I realize, more and more the time is short, and so there's this side of me that, just wants to get things out into the world quickly.
Yeah.
I can hop on and talk to other filmmakers and talk to other creatives on in this format, edit something together, and it's out in the world. I
You
can
get a
write
burnout
I can
share
yeah,
of
yeah, I can write something pretty quickly, get it out in the world and share it, and there it is, and
Mhm.
there is that, like, "Oh my gosh, I've gotta start with the script and revisions and then get people on board and then, try to finance the thing," and, then you kinda start to think, "Man, I've time is short, man. I gotta do some other stuff." And so I can definitely relate to that and finding being able to take a step back from filmmaking for a bit and focus your creative energies elsewhere. And then maybe through doing this, and you doing gardening, you kinda come back to filmmaking with kind of a renewed passion, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's where I am now, like, nobody really knows, I think, where my level of storytelling has come to,
Mhm.
because it's all in my head or it's all in the things that I'm doing in the garden, which are very subversive, and people don't necessarily know that I'm creating these stories and exploring these, like, ideas and ways, but honestly, it's like sometimes just picking in the garden, I'll be sitting and I'll have that rush of ideas that I haven't been able to have in years, where it's like, oh, this thing hit, and then it's just that spider web that my brain can do. Like when you have that idea and you're like, oh, now I see this thing. So I have tons of voice notes and things that I've written of
Yeah.
these projects that I'm either gonna write or kind of what my transition now is going to be for at least the immediate future, which is transitioning into making novels. Because I think I want to take the scripts that I've written that I see a lot of value in, but like I said, now that I don't think apply in the world we live in, or at least they may not by the time it takes to make the movie again.
Right.
But I want to get those stories out there. And there's been some other things that really clicked in my brain where I realized, oh, this is what was holding me back as a writer. And now my brain is like it used to be, I could just see a film and visually know how I want it to look, and now I can, like, do that with the story. I'm like, "Oh, this is how I want the character to sound
Mhm.
and the way I want to describe it versus show it." Like, I wanna actually have it, written. And those kind of things I never would have been able to do without just a lot of pain and effort of really having to focus to get these things out in a word form. And that's why I think it was so hard for me to be a writer is because I was having to translate my visual brain into a way that's you know, written word, but I was also trying to force it. It was never authentic because I hadn't
Mhm.
lived life either. And so what I've lived in the last 4 years has opened my brain in a way where I'm like, "Oh, now I can write from experience rather than write from imitation or from what I've seen in movies." Because I don't watch movies anymore. I maybe watch 1 movie a year if I can even force myself to. Like, the burnout is that bad.
Yeah, and I think there's a level of patience that we have to all have with ourselves because I know that, like, right now, I've got a couple of ideas, and I've written some drafts, and but I feel kinda stuck in a way, and sometimes I can put a lot of pressure on myself, like, "Oh, why can't I come up with a great idea to fix this problem or whatever?" And then I've just gotta, like, give myself patience, say, "You know what? I'm gonna go and do something else for a while, and, it'll come to me eventually,"
Yeah.
and give myself a little bit of grace in that regard.
And it's the same
Um,
thing where, like, when you're stuck on an idea, you go outside and walk for a second and then
yeah.
get it. Same thing with I think with burnout too. It's like it may take 3 months to a year or 2. Maybe that's your time away before your brain kicks back in. And that's where I am now. Like, my brain is now working again after last 2 years where it's like you getting something creative out of here was not gonna happen. Or if you did, it wasn't gonna be good. And now it's like, well, the brain's functioning a little bit better now, so you're getting this stuff out. But then it's how do we get it on paper and show it to people again? And that's the thing where
Mhm.
it's like trying to find time away to actually write because I can't just like sit down for 1 hour a day and write. I have to like make it my life, and that's how I have to do it. So my goal now is to be like, okay, let's get the garden business going enough to where that's what's going to make me have time to sit home. Because if I am traveling and all that too and working, that burns you out, but you don't have time to do the
Sure.
creative stuff you want.
Right. Yeah, because my day job is in video production, so I get it. Because you do your day job that might involve video production work, and then, you come home, and sometimes maybe the last thing you wanna do is do more film work or more video work. Because 'cause I've been doing that all day. My brain needs to be occupied with something else. It's like, I can imagine if let's say you're married to a masseuse, and that you wanna get, like, a free a shoulder massage at the end of the day. Well, it's like that Seinfeld episode when he's dating the massage therapist. It's
Mm.
like, I've been doing this all day. Like, I don't wanna do it more. I wanna do something different.
Yeah.
So, I can understand that. But
And I think there's something else you said I wanted to bring up too, where you said that you feel like
yeah.
you're like kind of stagnant or I think it's the idea that like us as filmmakers or creative, you feel like you have to be currently working on something for, I guess,
Yeah,
the perception of people to think you're still that thing. I think
that's
that a lot of
true.
people see what I'm doing and they're like, "Why isn't he making a movie? Why isn't that?" And I think they maybe they wonder like, "Have I given up?" or they only see me as a filmmaker if I'm making a movie. But if I'm
Mhm.
hiding away, working on things very deep in my brain that are going to come out at some point in a film or something, um, but they see the garden or whatever as a distraction. But you have to also remember that I think you too have to remember what all you've done in your career. Like, there are times where maybe we did make a ton of stuff in 1 year and the next year you didn't, but still in the 20 whatever years you've been doing it, you've also have a body of work that you can look at and be like, okay, I was very productive back then. Do I have to be that productive right now? Or
Sure.
can I take a little more time or a little more time to do your podcast that maybe makes a break between your films? Because who is saying that we have to make a movie every year? Or, I think for a while it was like growing up, I was like, every filmmaker makes a movie every 2 to 3 years. That's what they do. Why do they have to? You don't have to. I mean, obviously you have to make a living, but the expectation that you have to make a feature, then make another one, then make another one, and you have to compound and ride the wave to get to where you need to in the industry is also really tough because it's also not sustainable or logical for that to be your trajectory for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, it's like can I look at my bio online and can I really call myself a filmmaker if I've never made a feature? Can I really call myself a writer if no one's ever paid me to write something, but I'm just publishing it on my own? I
Yeah,
totally get that.
it's the title. Like if you made a film, then you're a filmmaker. Have you written
Right.
something? Then you're a writer. And I think people who have a bar that you have to meet to be considered legitimate in whatever form of whatever you're doing is bullshit.
Yep.
Because those people want to have a gatekeep or they want to have a glass ceiling or they want to have something that you have to break through, but then they're going to move it up a little bit more each time. Um,
Yes.
and that's where it's like I'm also just fed up with the film industry in general and just the systems involved because it's like I said, it shouldn't be this hard, but also shouldn't be this hard for people who have good ideas to get things made, or for people who've paid their dues and done all the things the industry said you have to do to make it, and then there'd be nowhere to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I did everything I was supposed to do when it came to Oz Land and the Atoning to step to the next thing, but then the next hurdle, the next people in the industry told me was, well, you got to do this and this and this. And I'd be like, well, how do I do that? And like, I don't know. But I'm just
Mm.
like, I did all this other stuff, and now there's another gate that I have to jump over and find some way.
Yeah, let's expand on that a little bit because, that's true because, in the '90s, we heard all of these stories about, oh, this young filmmaker gets into Sundance, and then they get discovered at Sundance, and their film gets bought, and then they're on their way. They do, and then Ben Affleck and Matt Damon did Project Greenlight for a while, and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, if I can just get on Project Greenlight, then I get my thing made." So what were some of those hurdles specifically that you found yourself jumping over with Auslan and the things that you were being told at the time, then with the Atoning, and then when it all kind of when the house of cards kinda came crashing down on you a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think Auslan, there was I mean, maybe I blocked out the bad of Auslan, but Auslan is great to me, um, because I think we were just making what we wanted. Like, we didn't
Mhm.
have these industry things I mean, yeah, we were like, "Okay, it needs to be a little sci-fi, it needs to be that," and if we had more money, we probably would've amped up some things for buyability, but we were making a movie about the story and these characters. So I think around that time or somewhere, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who made the $10,000 film, then he went and did Star Wars.
Oh, Gareth Edwards?
Yeah, Gareth Edwards. So there
Yeah.
was that kind of thing where like, oh, if you make a really good science fiction-ish $10,000 movie and you
Yeah.
get distributed, like that's your way to do it. And Auslan did that. We got distribution. We paid for the Hollywood premiere, the 1 week theatrical. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to work. We have a 1 week theatrical that lined up with our digital release. We're in all the big publications, getting a review from LA Times or whatever when there's other movies coming out that we're in the same words with, within the same article. But the least amount of money Auslan made in its first year was that first month that it came out. So
Hmm.
when it was getting all that press, when we were having a Hollywood, 1 week theatrical, no one cared. It didn't pay for it. That did not pay for what that cost. And so while that did not pay for Auslan's benefit, it did benefit me and those who worked on the movie because it got the attention of people who would pay for the atoning because they saw this glitz and glamour of a Hollywood premiere.
Okay.
They didn't see that it was paid for by the film, like we paid,
Yep.
and that it had no real return on investment other than the clout that it gave us. So when we did the atoning, that was something where I did stand up a lot, and I was like, "We're not doing a Hollywood premiere. Like, there's no reason for us to pay for that money." And the producers and people were like, "We should." And I had to really explain why it's not worth it.
Yeah.
In the end, we ended up getting a Redbox deal, which was way better.
Mhm.
That's the only reason why the movie made money, really, is because of Redbox. So it was like we did all those things, and I think it worked in small fragments. Maybe it made the atoning successful because we did certain things that were trendy that looked good for a trailer and a poster in Redbox. I think that's the only reason we got a Redbox deal is because we had a good poster and a good trailer. And I think that was really it. So it is that kind of like, does the movie matter sometimes, or is it what you can do on the back end? And I think that's what's tough is like trying to make a movie while trying to hit a dartboard that's moving industry
Mm.
wise or taste wise or what you're hearing from the ether of what you're supposed to do to succeed. And then in the end, it doesn't really matter because it all matters about who is really behind you in that machine. If you don't have it, you're just a little independent filmmaker and no one picks you up and takes you off and helps
Yeah.
you. It's really tough.
The Atoning poster is great. I remember just, that image still sticks into my mind when I think about that poster. It
And
was so
honestly,
well
I
done.
think that gave us the Redbox deal. I think
Yeah.
because when we got our distribution deal, shout out to Gravitas Ventures. If you're looking for a good distributor, they're good. And they were very honest with us. They're like, we don't think you'll get a Redbox deal. We don't think you'll get this or that. But we were like, well, we try. Like, we think we might have a
Mhm.
shot. And they're like, we'll try, but do not get your hopes up. You're probably just going to get this, this, and this, and that's it. But whatever reason, I think Netflix, or not Netflix, sorry, Redbox was just like, we need a horror movie to fill in this gap, and we need something that has this, whatever. I think we just landed it because I do
Yeah.
think like in the Redbox kiosk, that poster would attract a sale, even if Redbox never even watched the movie. I don't know if they.
Mhm.
So
Right. So, I'm just curious, maybe let's just kinda put on a forward-thinking cap for a second.
Mhm.
The lessons that you've learned from these experiences so far, if you were to do another feature,
no,
what are maybe some of the key things that you're gonna keep in mind to say, "Oh, okay,
no.
I've learned this from Auslan and the Atoning. This is how I'm gonna do it or approach it the next time."
Yeah. Well, my ultimate goal is I want to be a director behind a chair. I don't want to be a director behind a camera. I don't want to be director, DP, all the other things. Like,
Yeah.
well, yes, I think I'm good at being a director, TP, and wearing multiple hats. It's not sustainable. It burnt me out. And I think the movies weren't as good because I was having to wear too many hats. So that's number one is I'm only wearing the necessary hats and we're hiring people who are good at their job to do the rest, or people that I can collaborate well with. So that's number one.
Okay.
Two is everyone's getting paid well, like a decent rate, and 2-hour days is our goal. With like substantial resources on set where people are having a good time, taken care of, sleeping well. 5-day weeks, I'd love to do. 5-day weeks, 10-hour days. It shouldn't. I think actually, I don't know where this is coined, but Virginia Newcomb, who was in the Atoning, I saw her post something about slow filmmaking, and I think
Yeah.
that really resonated. Where I was like, oh, I work to slow my life down now.
Mhm.
I still talk too fast because that's how I live. But I have to really consciously work on slowing myself down. But on film, you don't. So really slow, resourceful, or not resourceful, but having the resources, and just well paid, well fed, well compensated people. That's really what I want to do because then I know that whatever we're making is going to be great. We didn't have all that on Ozland, but we had that gumbo or that gumbo. We didn't have gumbo. That
The gusto.
gusto, yeah, that word. We had that within us. But all of us who made Ozland, we paid our dues. We
Yeah.
paid our dues. We proved to people what we can do with nothing, and with just a lot of elbow grease. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have the money to treat people and pay people right. And then ultimately, the project's going to be way better because we're all just working at a better. We are machines, and in a way, so like if we're all working as a well-fueled machine and a human, the project's going to be great. So that's really what I want to do. But also to make sure that the script is worth making. Um,
Mhm.
it is an investment in your life. That's something else. I mean, this is not really the answer to your question, but back to something earlier about taking time off to live life or just to have new
Right.
hobbies or whatever. Sometimes you have to have that to process and really go deep down into whatever you are as a creative to come out on the other end to be able to share something worthwhile or cohesive or
Mhm.
to the level that you want to make it. And I think that was my struggle with actually, I'll talk about that. Rosemary is this film that I wrote in 2018, tried to get off the ground all throughout the pandemic. Had a pretty good mentor on it who really helped me. He's in the industry much for like on a different planet than I am. And he really helped me, but he kept pushing me saying this needs to be more of this, more of that in very encouraging ways. It wasn't like the Atoning situation where it's like, do this arbitrarily. It was supporting the story, but I had hit my creative limit. I was like, I can't write better than this. Like
Mhm.
I think this is great, and I can't do better than that. So I was hitting that wall that he was putting up creatively for me, which
Yeah.
is great because I think if I can, when I break it, it'll be the thing that I think it's going to be and get the attention. It's just I don't think I want to claw my way up anymore. I want to
Mhm.
pull back, come back out with something that I think is truly spectacular, and hopefully that makes up for all the dues paid, all the heartache, all the calls of burnout that led to whatever comes out next.
Yeah, I wrote when I wrote a script, once. I had somebody read it, and I know it was a first draft, so it wasn't great. But then when they made all their notes and everything, kind of what you're saying about a creative limit, creative ceiling, I thought, "Oh my gosh, how am I ever gonna rewrite this? Like, all my best ideas for this story are on the page already. Like, I can't do any more than this." And, so I understand that ceiling that you're talking about, and I sometimes fear that for me personally, if I take too much time away from it, it's a creative muscle that will begin to atrophy if I don't exercise it a little bit. And
Yeah.
so I do have that fear personally, like, "Oh my gosh, it's been 2 years. I've gotta write something, I gotta produce something because I might lose this skill in some way."
Well, you also have to remember you have to take care of yourself because, like,
Yeah.
if you let's say you had an injury, like I do think burnout is very similar to an injury. It's like takes physical and mental and emotional therapy to get out of it. And so if you do try to rush in too quick, then that muscle, that creative muscle you've used for 20 years is not going to give you anything because it's broken or it's, needs more
Mhm.
rest. What if you do need 2 years? What if you need 3 years and then this other time you're doing your drawing or something? Because I've also found out that now that I draw and do poetry and do all these things for the cartel, it's awakening things in my brain that were, you know, the 8 to 18-year-old version of me and what fueled
Mhm.
the filmmaking for 20 years after. Those are the muscles that I had worked to get me to where I could create things. But then now that muscle hurts so much and it's just like literally sometimes I'm looking at a computer or just fry me. But when I like I said earlier, whenever I get my brain working back right, it starts to splinter and do all of those things that young me used to do that came up with Ozland that was able to do atoning in such a short amount of time. Like, but I physically can't do it right now. But I can see how these other muscles that I'm working extra that may seem like a distraction or may seem like I'm going to lose that film muscle. It's like something I don't think you lose, but I think you have to rest and then you'll come back bigger. Just like a bodybuilder or something. They have to sometimes take
Right.
a break and then come back and build on. Or like a plant, you have to prune it and then it blooms bigger later. It's all the same thing. And I think that's where, even as a creative, maybe you have to prune yourself for a while. Maybe you have to hibernate for a while because the next season's when you're going to really bloom.
Yeah, awesome. And it's great 'cause you're really working that gardening analogy too,
It's
like,
all my whole
go
life.
dormant, come back bigger, come back brighter, come back fuller. I love it. Cool. Man, hey, the hour's gone by really fast. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you doing this,
Oh,
for
thank
me.
you. I appreciate it.
Um, I never like to end the show without giving guests a chance to plug anything they wanna plug or tell people how they can connect with you or anything that you're involved with or working on. So I just wanted to see if there's anything that you wanted to share.
Well, if you want to follow me on social media, my personal is mywilly MIWILLI 87, or you can look up Shindopen. That's my film production company. But also, if you really want to see what I'm working on right now, follow the Great Gatsby Herb Cartel, which is a real world that I've created. It's me and my two cats. We're growing all the herbs that we use to make whimsy and make medicine and make food out of. And it's very much like a documentary project. Like wherever you're
Cool.
following it, whether it's in real life at the markets or on social media, you're seeing a curated version of the world that I want you to see. And it's very much a documentary slash reality show sometimes with the garden. So it's all of that, but very much a tangible world you can actually come and visit or interact with the products and things.
That's cool.
That and there's also the Ozland 10th anniversary Blu-ray that's out there. If you love physical, want
Wow.
to keep it alive. Last year was the 10th anniversary, so I redid the Blu-ray. And there's the full Blu-ray with all the special features, but also I released a $5 version. It's like a little
Okay.
bitty. So if you want like a cheap Blu-ray, it has all the good stuff on it. And you can actually buy that through the Great Gatsby Herb Cartel. So
Oh, cool. So
yeah.
with, any other places where they can buy the Blu-ray?
No,
Okay.
it's not out anywhere. Just
Okay.
through because it's like it's. I mean, I have the full rights to Ozland, so like it's all fully independent. Like where it's on Amazon, it's through me. Um,
Okay. Awesome.
it's only on Amazon for rent or purchase, and it's only on Blu-ray. There's no like streaming unless you watch a bootleg somewhere. So
Okay. Cool. Michael, awesome conversation. Best of luck with everything you got going on.
you too.
So great. Great to catch up with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, too. And thank you for this conversation. It's always fun to
Yeah.
and especially in this way. I really enjoy talking about not always the positive version of filmmaking. Sometimes it's rough and
Sure.
people can't hear it.
But I think it's important to share all aspects of it and get all kinds of different viewpoints and a variety of different voices. It's been great.
Oh yeah, for sure. Thank you.
And that was my conversation with Michael Williams. I hope you got a lot out of that. As I said at the start, this was a conversation that got into some very honest and open, very real places. But I think it's something that maybe a lot of us think about and struggle with, but don't often verbalize to one another. So I hope this was helpful. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get podcasts. Be sure to leave a review. This will help others find the show. And you could subscribe to my newsletter on Substack, which is clinttill.substack.com. Find everything else that I'm doing at linktree.com/clinttill. Thanks so much for listening. This has been the Persistence of Vision podcast.